Yeah.
Sorry, guys. We're trying to do everything through aggregator that's pulling all of our feeds together and handling the rebroadcasts. So, okay, it says it's online now. Let me go double check.
Yep, it's on.
Live. Okay,
Yep,
we're up.
the return of Jason. There you go.
Dun, 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 dun. Oh, that's what you said to put it. So, copy
Hey,
paste.
that's fine. There you go. So, all right. I got good news and bad news. What do you want first?
Good news, I guess.
The good news first.
Yeah, go ahead with the good news.
The good news first. Okay, so I've been trying to get some more guests on the show. And I know that we've got a couple loaded on. Jason, I don't know if you've been, I know you've been busy, so I know you probably haven't been watching any of it probably, which is fine. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but we had Pete Proul on last month from IP for AP and Masters of Fixed Insight. Sometime this month, I'm still trying to lock down a date. We should be having Peter Myers coming on from Optical Structures, formerly from Optical Structures, and now is working for Woodland Hills. He builds custom rigs. He also built or helped build our own Scott Cole's rig with the C14 and the Rainbow Mount and the Los Mondi whole rigmarole. So he helped him. So he's going to talk about what he does, which should be really awesomely interesting. So check that out. The following month, we should be having, I'm trying to lock down the date, but he said he definitely will be here. The writer of APT is, and I'm going to mess up his name again. I'm not even going to say it, but the guy who wrote APT is going to be here on the following month. He's coming straight to us from Belgium, I believe. And then after that, in November, we finally locked down the last member of Masters of Fixed Insight, Warren Keller, will be here right before Thanksgiving. So come and check us out. We got 3 guests lined up, and it should be pretty cool. So that's the good news.
That's awesome.
The bad news.
That's really good. Yeah.
Now the bad news. And Eric, you already know the bad news.
Yeah, I already know the bad news.
The unofficial, unsanctioned Astroworld Star Party has been officially canceled. It's a shame, but Hurricane Ida had other plans, and it still looks at Thursday night looks pretty good, but the weather for the rest of the weekend really didn't make the trip very wonderful. It was 50-50.
Yeah.
And right, it's going back and forth every day, and the odds are, from my experience in September, is usually the worst of the 2 star parties because of the hurricane season and all that. So that being said, I know, Eric, you and I were talking about this a little bit earlier, about making the first official Astroworld Star Party, hopefully the last weekend in May. No, not in New Mexico. Cherry Springs.
That would be awesome.
That would be awesome. That would be awesome.
I might make that one.
I might. We should find a
Cosmic
place somewhere.
Campground. We should go to Cosmic Campground in New Mexico. There you go.
Well, maybe we could find some place like halfway between Arizona, New York, and Chicago. Maybe we could find something like in Kansas or something. Something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Kansas is pretty wide. You know what? Kansas is pretty wide open. So my wife's from Kansas, so I kind of know it a little bit. But it's pretty wide open. You can get some really nice skies, and it's almost zero, very minimal light pollution because it's nothing but farms and open area and stuff like that. The only major cities they have is probably Topeka, the biggest, their capital. And Lawrence, which is where my wife is from. But there's not much there. So you could find some good spots just so we can maybe schmooze up to, a farmer, say, hey, can we borrow a little, spot on your ranch?
Well, it was kind of neat the other night. PBS was doing a feature on it. I think it was on ABC Good Morning America this morning. They were talking about, I forget which of the national parks, but they have basically a train that goes through and takes you out into the desert in Utah to the national park, and they do a star train. So it goes out all under red light, you get red lanterns, and you get like 4 hours in a Bortle 1 in the U.S. It's one of the nationally registered dark sky sites, and I think they give you like 3 hours.
That's
So,
pretty cool.
so somebody's got to explain something to me, and maybe somebody could explain this to me because and by the way, hi Scott, we got the band back together. We got the band back together. So somebody's got to explain. So I'm looking at going. My friend Mark, who lives in the Northern Virginia area, I'm going to go down there the following weekend to drop my mother-in-law back home in D.C. And we're going to go on Friday or Thursday or something out to hang out and do telescope stuff. Cool. Fine. So I'm searching all over the place in Northern Virginia, and there's some really cool places like Shenandoah National Park, and there's a whole bunch. There's like 7 or 8 international dark sky registered places just in his area alone, within 50 miles of his house.
That's pretty impressive. That's cool.
Explain to me this. Why would you want to become an international dark sky associated place, park, whatever, and close at dusk? Why?
Yeah, right?
Why would you do that? Well, I don't understand.
The purpose.
Why
defeats
nice
the purpose.
About
I blasted the guy, not Shenandoah, the first one that I was looking at. I'm like, what is it? He's like, oh, well, we use it for our private nights and and all this. I said, are you serious? So nobody could go there after dark? Nope, not unless it's a public night.
That's
Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. So my friend Mark is looking for a place now that we could go to when I go down there. So I'm gonna bring my scope, and I bought him a case, and so I'm gonna bring it all down there and gonna hang out with him one night, or whatever night is good. So it's I want to say it was his area is like a 20.8 on the SQM, so a far cry from a 17.8 in Long Island. So so.
So this,
But anyway.
I found it. It's the Great Basin Star Train, part of the Nevada Northern Railway. So here's the.
That's cool.
Site. So
I've been to Great Basin. It's beautiful there. Yep.
That's pretty cool.
It
And
really
how much
is.
is it?
Let's see if they. Is it right?
Yeah, you can't really believe the stars. The first time you get to a site like that, that's Bortle 1, Bortle 2, like that. It's awe-inspiring.
Well, I mean, I've seen Bortle 2 in Cherry Springs, but I've never seen Bortle 1 by any means. But I'll tell you, when I took a train from New York to LA one time, and if you take the Amtrak through, and it goes through New Mexico and the mountains and all that, there is a sightseeing train in there, and it's an all-glass sightseeing train with a bar in it. And let me tell you something. I told them to shut off all. No one was there. It was only me at like 2:00 in the morning. It was only me, and I was looking up, even though it was through plexiglass, but the whole thing was glass, and all you did was look up, and it was just, even through plexiglass, it was awesome. Going through the mountains and everything, and right through New Mexico and Albuquerque and all. When you started going into the main, like where there's nothing around.
Yeah.
It just happened to be nighttime when we would go right through like the middle of the desert. It was awesome. So it was pretty cool.
So it's $56 per adult, $25 for children 4 to 12.
Ah, that's nothing.
But if you're a member of their group, you can get pre-sale tickets for $30.
Okay.
Wow. And where does it take off from?
Let's see here. I'll have to read through it, and maybe I'll make this a highlight for one of my shows when I come back.
No, yeah, that's fine.
Unfortunately, I didn't do a whole lot of research on this.
No, we're winging it here, so.
Yeah.
I would imagine they'd have to have at least one stop where you can, look through a telescope, or at least a pair of astronomy binoculars.
The big thing that they're really pushing is just being able to see it with the naked eye. So there's no real scopes and anything set up. I think if you did more of their specialty or you talk to them, they might have something prearranged. This particular one is a 45-minute visit. I know they were talking about that they do special events that are longer that might have like scopes and things like that to do EAA or visual.
Okay, that's cool.
But, I want to say it's like an hour and a half, 2 hours out, 45 minutes off the train, and then they bring you back.
That's cool. That's cool.
It would be interesting, to take the family or something. Just to go take the family for a quick thing, nothing. Don't expect, something for us. Don't expect to take your rigs or anything like that. Even if I took my Rasa, I wouldn't even be able to use it. But, it's something,
nice
to
thing
be
is,
interesting
like,
for the kids.
With something like that.
Take some binoculars. It would be nice.
Even if you took your
BYOB.
DSLR and a velometer, with a decent wide field lens, you could at least do a couple images of the Milky Way or do a time lapse.
Definitely.
45 minutes gives you a decent amount of data to at least get a decent image, and if it's a Bortle 1, even a Bortle 2, you're going to get a ton of light data.
You're going to get
some really decent lens and a DSLR.
Yeah, even a couple of minutes will do you just fine with those guys. I mean, that's not.
Not an issue. Especially if you're doing some Milky Way imaging or anything like that, for sure. You can do some really great Milky Way imaging for that.
Yep.
But yeah,
BYOB.
So that's the good news, and that's the bad news. Bring your own binoculars. Everyone's asking about Nina. I think I don't know. Astro for Dummies. I didn't know Tyler was using Nina. I didn't know he was taking pictures, but anyway,
like most things with Tyler, he's been experimenting.
Yeah, he's been experimenting for a year. Come on, get with it, boy, get with it. But
he does. He tests things.
Yeah, but and that's fine. That's cool. He does his thing, and he keeps on getting toys. He's like the guy on the bottom right over there. He's like Scott. But
Are you kidding me? My stuff is all packed up. I can't even do nothing. You should see my garage.
Well, hey, that's what you get for moving.
I know.
Moving's a terror. I know
what it is.
Florida.
Yeah. COVID capital of the world, baby.
Well, he's not moving to Miami.
Yeah, okay.
Well, that's true. Yeah, it could be worse. You could be going to like Houston.
Orlando.
No, I could be worse. I could be living in Louisiana.
Exactly. You could
Mississippi.
be. Yeah.
Louisiana's Louisiana.
Yeah.
Thank God it wasn't as bad as Katrina was, but man, it's still. Man, they're just starting to get electric now. I mean, and then to very limited areas. I mean, it's.
And by the way, let me just real quick shout out, to my family down there to my family down there in Louisiana, down in Bastrop in Monroe. God's bless. I love you guys. Stay safe. The power, I'm sure if it's not up yet, it'll be up soon. So much love to you guys.
Absolutely, yes. Stay safe. Absolutely.
The client that I was with all last week, the two of the three owners of the company and about a third of our crew were all from the New Orleans greater area. And the last report, everybody was safe, everybody's fine, but they were suffering quite a bit of damage and stuff like that. So most of them, unfortunately, had to go right to Atlanta for our next show, so they're already prepping for our landing here this weekend to get in there and do our next show.
Yeah, big shout out to the Army Corps of Engineers for those new levees, man. Apparently, they really saved the day.
Well, absolutely. Well, they did a lot of work on those too. Since
you ain't kidding.
They've done a lot of work on it. So
they did say one of the levees did fail, but it's one that typically fails. That's kind of low, anyways.
That's one we knew was going to fail, so just let it go. But
controlled chaos.
Yeah, Tom Digon said, "Come to Nevada, no hurricanes, no tornadoes, no earthquakes, and wide open skies." I just had to, respond to him
Yeah,
and say, "No water,
and no water. Yeah,
no water."
I know. Holy cow! Have you
So
seen
yeah,
Lake Mead? Have you seen Lake Powell?
well,
Nobody has
Lake
either.
Mead. I drove around Lake Mead. There's a picture. I have a picture of me right by what is it? What is it? The Hoover Dam over there.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
And for whatever reason, if you've been to the Hoover Dam, I'm sure,
Oh yeah.
Jason has,
Yep.
but
I have
Here.
been.
if you look at, there's like a road going around it, and there's like grass that goes down into the visitor center. It kind of goes, and there's like the slope up the side, and there's like these little concrete drains that kind of go up. There's like little thing. So stupid me, I was like drinking like mad. So I was like, I shimmy up this concrete thing like this, and I'm trying to get up and I went up probably about, I guess it was like a 45-degree angle, and it was like, I was probably like, I don't know, 75 feet up when I started getting scared. So I'm sitting there crying up. And then I turn around, and my friend's got a picture of me standing in between this little concrete thing all the way up at the top of this slide. It took me about 45 minutes to get down because I had to kind of do one of these and slide down on my butt the whole time. But yeah, it's cool. It's cool. Yeah, Lake Mead is a beautiful place. We, of course, decided we wanted to go to Area 51. And we went. So
Yeah, that's a little farther north.
Yeah, no, I'll tell that story another time. That's a little different, but that was a scary story too. But we won't talk about that. I was sworn to secrecy. but anyway, so that's it for that. I mean, last week, Eric, you and I had a great show. I mean, like a lot of people are talking about it online. That's saying that we kept this thing down. I think we were at like an hour and 8 minutes or something like that. Hour and 10 minutes, and we were.
Who are you?
And we were focused, man. We were like on the money,
we
like
were
the whole
locked
night. Yeah, we were like, oh yeah, I think
We were
it's the
locked
first
in.
time in like 8 months. We were like kind of like, and it was really, really good. It was really
So
good.
you logged on, you did a 10-minute bit and hung up?
Yeah, that's what we did. And then I just played music for 57 minutes, and that was it. but something's still beeping.
So, speaking of stuff and, and decent content and all that stuff, I know we were talking about what we want to discuss and stuff like that. So I thought of, some new, newbie stuff to talk about, new astrophotographers, people who are pretty advanced, already know about a lot of this stuff. But we bringing this out, I wanted to talk a little bit about back focus. And not just back focus and, not just back focus, but back focus when you're using one of these guys, an off-axis guider. And why you would actually want to use an off-axis guider versus a guide scope, especially, the reason why, as far as back focus, and for those new guys who don't know what back focus is, in plain, in simple terms, it is the distance from the first focal, the first optics. So, for example, if you have a reducer like this, from that piece of glass, there's a recommendation as far as how far your camera needs to be as far as distance from that piece of glass. Okay. So to achieve focus, to achieve best focus. And for most manufacturers such as ZWO, QHY, and for most, and even, I think even with certain DSLRs and stuff like that, the optimal distance, with most telescopes is 55 millimeters. However, it is a bit different when it comes to certain Schmidt-Cassegrains. Okay.
Yep.
And with Schmidt-Cassegrains, their back focus is actually for, say, an 8-inch aperture Schmidt Cassegrain, like mine, I have the Edge 8. It is 105 millimeters. Now, Scott, for example, he has an Edge 14. He has the Beast, and the Schmidt Cassegrains that are between 9.25 up to 14 inches are, I believe, Scott, is it 156 millimeters?
146.
So
146.
146. Okay. So they have much more. But the reason you will want to use an off-axis guider, one is when you're working with not cameras, but telescopes with a long focal length. With a long focal length. And when I consider what do I consider somewhat a long focal length? For me personally, I would put that at starting at maybe about 12 to 1500 millimeter and up. Okay. And it is important to, if we're in astrophotography, the main goal for us is to get clear, sharp stars. Okay. So with an off-axis guider, what you're going to do is you basically have, I take this off here. You have, I don't know if you guys can see this, there inside of there is a prism. And this is a very small prism. With Schmidt Cassegrains, I would recommend an off-axis guider with a very large prism. For mine, I have a Celestron off-axis guider, and I believe my prism size is about 12.5 millimeter.
That's like 12.
If I'm not mistaken.
That's actually a pretty good size.
That's a great size. That is a very large size prism. With something like this, with this size, I believe it is maybe about 8 millimeter for a ZWO.
ZWO.
Or something like that.
Yeah, that's 8 millimeter.
So, but the goal of this is that you would put this in your imaging train. Okay, this will be part of your imaging train. So, usually with ZWO, you would have your glass or your reducer or your telescope. Whoops, don't want to drop this, but I did. And then you would have your OAG and so maybe a spacer here. And sometimes you would also have an electronic filter wheel and your camera. And with an off-axis guider being in the middle of this image train, the light that a piece of the light, a small piece of the field of your focal, I believe it's like the focal plane, your focal area, would hit this prism, and you would get a small piece of that field of view hitting your camera. Okay, while the majority of everything else is going to your camera here, it would hit the guide camera. But why would you use it? Plain and simple, because you would want if you put imagine putting, say, a guide scope on top of that Schmidt Cassegrain, and to achieve, good guiding and to have good guiding, you would need a somewhat long focal length guide scope. And what I mean by a long focal length guide scope would be something maybe within 70 to 80 millimeters. Something like that, maybe even 90 millimeters. Now, the thing about that is, of course, is that you're adding weight. You're adding that weight. And also, so there's one hit against you. Another would be if you are moving while that mount is slewing, okay, you're going to have flex, F-L-E-X. You're going to have flex. And what that means is gravity plays a part, of course, with everything with mass, gets pulled down by gravity. So that telescope, that guide scope, is also going to be affected by gravity. And you will end up, and it will begin to flex, it will begin to move. Even the slightest movement, it would begin to move. And you would get what I would call this. Let me share my screen here. I don't know if you can. Can you guys see that?
I think I need my glasses.
This is what we call flexure, differential flexure. And what happens is even though your camera and everything is in focus, and you may even get good guiding numbers, because of the because of the weight, the pull of gravity on that guide scope, pulling down when you're moving it around, when you're dithering, not when you're dithering, but when you're moving that guide scope, when that guide scope is sending pulses to the mount for corrections, then you can end up flexing and pulling on that guide scope. That gravity pulls, and then it waves, right?
Wow.
So what happens is that you end up getting this. So you can end up having great numbers, but your images will look like that. And that's because of the flexure being caused by, that guide scope, because with that long focal length. Okay. And so having the off-axis guider answers that question. It resolves that issue by having this already in your image train and already weighted, accounted for, and you don't have that extra, and you already have everything that accounted for when you're doing your balancing and everything. You don't have that extra weight on top of your OTA, right? And you can actually get, and with this guide camera, you will actually be able to get guide stars, depending on the size of your prism and the size of the sensor of your guide camera. You'll be able to get guide stars, and now you're able to guide much more effectively. Your numbers will be much lower, almost the way you expect them to be. The sub 50 arc second, stuff like that. Numbers like that.
And you're also guiding it 1-to-1 at that point, because you're at the same focal length of your scope. So
right. You are.
You're not at. Yeah, I mean that's and I'm not the SCT user, so I'm just gonna put my 2 cents in. But I think you were going there anyway.
Yeah.
When you're guiding at the same focal length as your imaging scope, you're gonna get much better results as opposed to running a lower focal length or a sub, like a third or a quarter focal length. Yes. It's gonna be a big issue. So as far as I know, I mean, you could expand on that.
Yeah, no, that is, and that's exactly it. You're getting you are getting 1-to-1. Because your OTA, that Schmidt-Cassegrain, is basically, it's your guide scope.
Yeah,
it is your guide scope.
Yep.
And it's your image, and of course, on top of your imaging scope, it's doing. You are exactly right. You have a 1-to-1 ratio. Okay, and you do not have that worry about flexure anymore. Now, as far as the back focus, we know we've talked about 105 millimeters for an 8-inch Schmidt-Cassegrain, 146 for a 9 1/4 up to a 14, and we also know most other telescopes like refractors it's usually about 55 millimeter back focus. Now, when you throw an off-axis guider in the mix, you have to also take into account the back focus of this guy, of your camera, of your guide camera. And what it has to be is if this from basically from the distance of your the middle, usually they say the distance or the center of your off-axis guider
The center of the prism.
to your to base or the center of the prism. Thank you. To your sensor, that distance, because you want to be basically parafocal,
needs to be the same.
It needs to be the same up here.
That's right.
Yep.
So that's another thing you have to take into account of is you have to make sure that this back focus is equal to this back focus when you're at this point here. When you're at that center point where that prism is, you get your you measure this out, you get your caliper out, measure it out, and you do the same thing up here. And then after that, the next thing I would recommend you do is if you have sharp cap, ASI cap, whatever, hook it up to your hook up your camera along with your guide camera here with the off-axis guide, or hook them up to a program like SharpCap. And during the day, it's best to do this during the day, in my opinion, is to point it to a far off place, to a far off point, and once you get your camera, your imaging camera in focus, then you can then you start working on getting that back focus and that back focus and getting this camera into focus. So by the time that it's done, by the time everything is equal, everything is equal here. So by the time you're ready to image, you should be ready to go. You just need to do your updated focusing on a star, get that set. But if you've already have this locked in during the day, it should be fine for night.
Yep.
Now, one other thing that I've noted someone told me was as a tip, and then I'll have to check this out, but on the back of, say, a guide camera here, you see where you have your USB-C.
Yep.
Line the USB-C port, line this up with your, in the same direction of your prism. So basically, if your prism is here, okay, you want to have it both vertical. So if this is vertical, you see your prism down there.
I got
slide this in, make it the same way, and just line it up. So it's like that, and your prism is there as well, and that's going to help resolving and making sure you get the guide scars are as round as they can possibly be, is what I'm getting at. So
and I'm going to correct me if I mean that's also going to help you get probably more guide stars if you're going width to width and height to height on the prism, because the prism is like a rectangle as well. I mean, if you kind of look at it, it's longer on one side than the other. So if your chip is aligned with that prism, you're not getting any cutoff on the chip, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
You are. So. That's exactly correct. And don't forget, when you're setting up your off-axis guider, take a look, and you're hooking everything up. What you want also is, I don't have it set here because this is just a demo, but you look at your sensor, your imaging sensor, okay, and you want to line up your prism, okay, just above, just at the top edge of your sensor, okay, and ideally, for this is a 533, so this has a square sensor, so it really doesn't matter. But for my 294 and anything that has a rectangular sensor, you want to have the horizontal or the wider side facing, lined up with that prism. You don't want the vertical side, the shorter side. You want the wider side. Okay? You want that lined up as best you can to that prism, to the You want the prism top,
Gotcha.
on the top edge of that sensor.
Yeah,
So one of the
You know,
things-
if you don't have that set up, you're gonna see shadowing too from the prism.
You will
You'll start
definitely
blocking.
see
You'll
shadowing.
start seeing a block of your. What are you showing, man? What are you doing?
See that?
He's trying to get.
showing. You see,
Yeah,
he's actually showing.
that's gonna
his
be
prism.
tough. I can make it now. Now I can see it.
Yeah, he's showing his prism and his orientation of his
Yep.
camera sensor, which is the way you want it to be. So let me set
Yep.
that down.
There you
Yep,
go.
exactly. That's the way you
There
want
you go.
it.
Perfect. Just like that. There you go.
There it is. That's it, man. You got it.
So one of the things that I saw Gary posted, and he said he was having a ton of issue, and most people will have this same issue, is with the full frame cameras and the OAGs, you're always going to see the prism in a full frame camera.
Yeah,
It's
you
just
can't
the
get it
sensor's
high
too
enough.
It
Yep.
depends on the OAG you have, and now I understand that the Celestron OAG, and I'm sure the Astrodon MOAG has this as well, where you have a much larger mount, much larger, that you can put on that you would put on the telescope side. So it would go on this side, this side right here, and that would support a full frame camera.
Yeah,
That
A
will
lot of people
support
are still battering
it's wide
with the
enough.
full frames, especially with the QHY 600 and the ASI 6200 series.
Right.
Yeah.
So for example, if you get that Celestron OAG, it is, I believe, the large SCT adapter.
Yep.
So if we look at that here, and they're not that much to get that large, it's just like $35. But that will address that will address that issue. To use that, so let me just pull this up. Let me share my screen again. So
yeah.
So this is the larger version, and this opening is wide enough to support that full frame camera, because like it says right there, it's great for large format cameras like the 5D and the 5D and the 6D, which is what I have.
Yep.
So it says it right there. So that's something, to address that. That is something to consider is, do you have the right off-axis guider to do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now I took the filter out of the MOAG, right? The filter slider out of the MOAG, and if I don't know how well I can do this, but if I shine that light up in there, hold on.
Right.
There we go.
A little high. Yeah, like that. Yep.
I say that.
There you go.
That.
Yep.
You see how high that prism is in there?
Yep.
This unit will easily accept a full frame camera. You can have the MOAGs outfitted, with their filter slider or with a filter wheel, an electronic filter wheel if you want, and it will take a full frame camera easily. They are big enough to do it. But with the APS-C, and the 36 millimeter filters, I mean, it's in comparison to a full frame. I mean, that little 36 millimeter filter is, it's tiny.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
It's tiny.
So Gary, to Gary to help you out, if you want to consider going back to an off-axis guider, that's something to consider. Is consider the MOAG, or consider the Celestron, but get that adapter, that large SCT adapter, and then you can basically modify to fit your refractor. If you're using a refractor, and
the only downside to the MOAG is that it's expensive. That's the only downside.
It is
$1,000. Yeah, it's expensive.
Yeah, it's not cheap.
Yeah. no. But
but it is it is definitely worth it though. I mean, those things
and it's
are monster
the other
size
thing too about the Moag is that it's modular. It's completely modular.
Yes.
So if you want to use it for a 4/3, you can do that. You want to use it for an APS, you can do that. You want to go all the way to full frame, you can do that. You can change it out just by adding a different adapter, a different piece to it. So that's an advantage. You can go from the little tiny sensors all the way up to the full frames.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
But then again, nothing about our hobby is inexpensive. So
God,
no,
that's absolutely no.
Everything's expensive. The price of water is expensive these days. I mean,
yeah, $7 for a bottle of water.
Cheap.
That's nothing. You should have been over at the state fair.
My alcohol is less expensive than the water.
So hopefully that information can help, people who have Schmidt-Castle grains, who are working with off-axis guiders, especially the new guys, because my first scope was a Schmidt-Castle grain. It was the 8S. It was the Nexar 8SE.
Yep.
So, and if you're starting, and that's a very popular beginner telescope. So if you're jumping in and you want to use that 8SE to get started, you want to get an off-axis guider. You want to make sure you have the proper back focus, and you definitely want to consider getting, like I said, that off-axis guider, because it's going to save you a lot of frustration. Believe me, because I tell you, when I had that back in the day, when I showed that picture, was from back in the day.
Yep.
It drove me nuts because everything on my guide numbers looked great. I could never understand why that was happening. When I would wake up in the morning and I'd go take a look at my images and I'd have that, that line going across is because, it's that because the camera, because you're getting the mount.
Tube flexure.
The tube flexure. Yep. And it would just drive me insane.
And I'm sure that being on a single fork mount didn't help either. So, I mean,
No, it didn't.
Yeah. And I think that's something that we go back and forth with. I think I want to say all of us, I know at least you and me, Eric, both started with our first telescope as our first main telescope as an 8-inch Schmidt, and I bought I went the Meade way. I probably bought mine 20 years before you because the age difference is a little different. But when I bought my Meade, it wasn't in a position where Meade is now. Meade was actually one of the two main telescope makers in the 80s and 90s, which was Celestron and Meade, and that was it. So Meade was cool, and I got it, and I spent $2,000 on a telescope. I bought an LX200 GPS, and it was great. And I did the whole astrophotography thing, and I did the 80 millimeter on top. I put an Orion ED80 on top, not the short tube, the big one.
Mm-hmm.
So I put that on there, and I figured out that ED80 was too good of a scope to be used as a guide scope, and I took it off quickly. And whatever the case, I never had the issue with tube flexure per se, because I think one of the reasons why is because I was on a dual fork. Number one, I had more stability there, so that's the first thing. The second thing, I don't know if I didn't have that weight on the back pulling down on the scope, because all I had was a DSLR, just stuffed back there with a small. I had a 3.3 focal reducer when they used to sell those, but I had that, and it was great. So I had a couple good photos, but sooner or later I realized, and you realized as well, we both ended up going refractor way until we make full circle, and then go back to Schmidt. But so I still haven't made that total turn yet. I'll wait for my new mount to do that. But once I do, I'm sure to get probably an 11. I would say an 11 is going to be my thing.
Gary had a comment. He said that he is using the Monster Moag and still sees the shadow. Gary, now forgive me if I'm speaking, above or below your knowledge level. But is it possible that you're not using the right spacers for the unit? This unit here, you can see that the two bolts on this, that whole stock and prism unit comes out, and there are spacers that you can put in there to raise it up, and that will cause that prism to come up a little bit. So and make sure you're using the right spacers to get the bottom of that prism out of the field of view.
So are there, when it comes in the box, does it come with different millimeter spacers?
It comes with them. Yes.
So that could be a possible. Oh, everyone's asking you what. Yeah, I mean, if you're already at the max of where you're at, then that would make sense. That would make sense to me.
Yeah.
Unless if he's using the biggest one and still seeing the shadow, and then
the spacers are all the spacers are just going to back that stock up,
right?
So that it's going to raise that up. So if he's not using any spacers at all, he's bottomed all the way out.
Yeah, and then he
may be using the spacers. I don't know. That's why I said forgive me. If I'm speaking below.
No. That was it. No, hey, listen, that's a good way to say it. We don't know the experience level of everybody who's watching. So we're not here to offend anybody at all. But we gotta always. It's kind of like in IT. And Eric and Jason, you'll back me up on this. What's the first thing you ask in IT? Is it plugged in? I mean, did you try rebooting it? I mean, and then you move on from there. So, I mean, you always want to make sure there's power. You still want to make sure that, that the proper steps were taken. And you don't want to take it for granted that everybody thinks they know what they know. Sometimes they don't know what they don't know. So, and even we don't know what we don't know until we find out we don't know it. So
I don't know nothing.
Got it? I know nothing.
Sergeant Schultz.
I will say that right now so far I am enjoying my Schmidt. I know that I've had refractors for years, and I'm definitely going to go and get another one, especially for travel. Because they are so great.
You miss your refractor.
I do. Yeah, I did. But I do love that. I do love my Schmidt, and and my Rasa, and to have just the two scopes right now is kind of cool. But I have 3 scopes.
You're not going back and forth like crazy.
I'm not going back and forth. I can do planetary and have some fun here. Going with F10 and shooting that sucker up to F25. I can throw on the reducer, and go F7 and do some nice deep sky, or I can, just switch over to this one scope to switch over to the Rasa, which is basically the same thing as the H with a Hyperstar, and I can do wide field.
I was jealous of our friend TJ Conley. He had his 9 1/4 out, and he had his son going planet to planet doing a.
Yeah, that was awesome.
I saw that. Yeah, that was cool.
Like, man, I wish I had that.
Yeah.
We got some other. Tom asked me what new mount. The new mount I have on order that should be coming hopefully by Thanksgiving. I actually spoke to I spoke to a friend of mine over at Skywatcher last Thursday, and we're still on pace for mid-November for my EQ8R. So that's coming. So I don't think unless if I buy a super lightweight mount like Mr. Scott, I think that mount will be the mount that I'll be on the pier permanently, and then my EQ6R will be my travel mount. So I mean, I think that's where I'm going right now until I win the lotto and get $10,000 to spend on a rainbow or a Hobum or something, or even an Avalon for that matter. But I mean,
right.
Robert Bean said, I'm looking to get a used Skywatcher EvoStar 100 EDF9 for my first larger refractor. I have an Edge 8 HD, Hyperstar CGEM OAG, and small refractor. He's got a Sharpstar EDP H2. I think that's the 94, if I remember right. Could be the 76. I'm not sure which one. He has it on an iOptron CM40. Can I image at f9 with a 294? Can I make it a little faster with a 0.85 reducer? What's your experience with slower refractors on astrophotography? Well, I don't know if I've ever imaged at f9 with a refractor. I think the slowest one I've had was an f7.
Yeah, mine was an f7 as well. My 126, and matter of fact, the ED 152, I believe it's an f8.
Okay.
I believe the ED 152 is an f8, and I've imaged with that, and it's but never with an f9.
I mean, but I don't see why you shouldn't be able. I mean, I'd have to look on Astro Tools, astronomy.tools to kind of check it out. But I don't see an issue with a 294. That's a pretty big chip for 294. It's not a bad size. So at f9, it shouldn't be a problem. If you want, Rob, you can hit me up tomorrow at Camera Concepts, or send me a text message later on. I can definitely look it up for you with the Evo Star. So
now, people get really caught up in the F number, and really you're not going to see a dramatic difference. All it's going to mean is you're going to image slightly longer.
Yep,
so,
that's exactly my thought.
You can get a performance gain by going to a 0.85 or a 0.7. It will help you, and all that's going to do is lessen your time, but it's going to also widen your field of view. So you have to kind of balance what you're going to do. Honestly, with that camera, either the mono or the color, you're not going to see a dramatic difference. If you were going to shoot, let's say at an f7, like what I'm used to, f7, say 30 seconds on a standard emissions nebula, we'll just say Orion for this sake of argument, 15 seconds with an f7. You'll be at 18 to 30. 20 seconds with an f9.
Yeah.
It's really not going to be dramatically different. And you'll shoot more frames. That's really what you're going to do. All it's going to cost you is a little bit more time. You're not going to be harmed by doing it. You're just going to have longer and more exposures to get the same results. That's the only benefit you get from that higher f-stop.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't think that's going to be an issue with that. I mean, the Evo Star 100 is a decent scope to start off with. It's a little slow, but I mean, it'll work fine. If you got a 294, just hook it up and go. I mean,
and the other thing is, if you haven't bought that Evo Star yet, maybe look at getting one of the other Sharp Stars that are a little bit faster. Look at the different focal lengths that they've got out there.
Well, he's got a PH2 already. I'm not sure which one he has. I think they make two, the 76 and the 94.
The double.
But so you definitely want to get a triplet. Evo Star, the Evo Star is all that, and in all fairness, the Evo Star always comes out with sales. They got that dope doublet discount with the Evo Star. They always have that going on. So you might want to wait a little bit for that if you can. It's a 56. I'm sorry, not 76. I'm sorry. You're right, Rob.
So the other thing too is if you're not really married to the scope and it's your favorite thing ever because it's got some sort of emotional attachment, put it up on cloudy nights and look at picking up something like the Ascars. You can get a much faster Quint for really cheap in comparison. And you're going to get a faster piece of glass, better quality
better
glass.
Optics.
Overall, you're going to have the better optics, and you'll be able to shoot shorter times, less exposures to get that same detail. And you're not going to have to worry about field flatteners. It has a reducer that you can get that's already built for the kit.
It comes in a package too. Yeah.
Yep. Well, you have to buy the reducer separate typically, but
but
but they're packaged specifically for that focal length. Yep. And I can really vouch for the Ascar line. I've used and shot on both the 600 and the FRA 400. They're amazing pieces of glass for the price point. They're damn hard to beat. So
yeah, you never want to skimp on glass. You know, if it's a difference between a couple of $100, even $500 or $600 difference, going from a doublet to a triplet, always go to the triplet.
Always go for the triplet.
Yeah. Yep, always. Yeah, you'll have less issues with color aberrations.
Oh yeah.
Well, and it's one less thing you're going to have to put in your optics, because if you're at that doublet, you're automatically going to want to put in a field flattener to get that third element in there. So why not start with that, and then you have the option of adding a flattener or using your reducers.
All you're doing is bending the curve, and you're probably making the chromatic aberration probably a little bit worse.
Unless it's something that's spec built for that specific scope.
Yeah, if you have a fluorite doublet like the William Optics, which has very little color aberration, chromatic aberration, unless you have something of that caliber, and I hate to say it, the Evo Star is not of that caliber. It's not treated in the same way as the fluorite doublet from William Optics.
Yep.
You want to make sure do your due diligence. Make sure you're getting the biggest bang for your buck. If you're going to spend $800 on Evo Star 100, and I'm just throwing a number out there. I don't think they're that expensive, but I'm just throwing a number out there. If you're going to spend that kind of money, you may want to look at the ASCAR. It might be a slightly smaller aperture, but you're going to get a much more quality image.
Much better. He's right.
And
the other thing, too, is looking at the Explore Scientific. I mean, even getting the 102 gets you out at 714 millimeter focal length.
Yeah.
Yeah, getting the aluminum body, you're a hair over $1,000, and it's already going to be a triplet. They're time proven. They've been solid. The customer service is real good. I mean,
customer service is awesome. As long as you register the scope, make sure you register the scope.
Register the scope.
Register the scope. But Explore Scientifics, I got one sitting in the other room.
I've almost exclusively shot the Explore Scientifics until I got my ASCAR. And
holy cow, Titan!
He's hungry. But
say hello, everybody.
If you're not married to it, I definitely look at doing an upgrade. Sell it off.
Yeah.
Let somebody's high school, college kid get into the doublet and move into a triplet. You'll be much happier, and the money you're going to spend in getting the field flattener to fix the CA, you're already into the triplet anyways. So I just sell it and move up.
Just move on.
Yeah, the nice thing is things are pretty well back to relative availability. You're not waiting 6-8 months for scopes anymore. Most people have a lot of that. And I won't call it entry level, but it's that entry triplet tier. At that $1,000 to $2,000 range are fairly well stocked, both with local and national resellers. So,
well, even the 80 Esprit right now is running $1,700. I mean, so that's the 80, and that gets you at 400 millimeter flat.
Yeah, 400.
400 flat. The 480 is the Explorer. But
the FRA 400 gets you at 400 millimeter.
Yep.
And
that might actually be my next scope.
I love my FRA 400 Quint.
That might be that. Yeah, it's a Quint, and that from what you've told me about it, Jason, I've already said that's most likely going to be my next scope, and that's going to be my travel scope. For when I'm going places and stuff like that. So
and for me, I had the
and it's fast.
Space Cat.
Is that like is that like an F4 or
it's an
F4?
4.6.
It's an F4, and then if you put the reducer in, it becomes an F5.
5.6.
Yeah.
6.
But for performance and weight, yes, it's a bigger piece of glass. You've got the 5 elements of glass, so it does slightly edge out the Space Cat that I had, and I love that Space Cat. It was an amazing piece of glass. It was really versatile. It was lightweight. It was a really good travel piece, but performance-wise and what I was getting and the ability to put in that reducer flattener to be able to get a little bit wider field to shoot a larger object, it made it a much more versatile platform. and I was all in for like $1,700. Couldn't turn it. I just couldn't turn it down. So I sold my Space Cat, and it's been a very solid portable unit for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I use for more of my like field imaging and going out with friends and set that up if I don't do the DSLR. And I put that on my CM40. It's a little bit lightweight for my 70, so the 70 typically gets the 140. I've ran all the way up to the 152 carbon fiber from Explorer on it, and that 170 has been solid. So it's more finding what targets you think you want to acquire, find the focal length that's going to work best, and then from there start narrowing down your field of what your price point can afford. There's so many options in the market these days, so it's really figuring out where your happy spot is, what your best niche is going to be.
Sure.
And it looks like I had a question regarding backlash on the 8R. So the RH, I believe, Tom, is the one that you're talking about. The RH is the more expensive with the higher end encoders. I did not get that one. I couldn't justify the $2,000 more it was going to cost me to get better encoders. However, I will tell you that I have not received the 8R yet, so I haven't been able to test anything. But I do have friends across the world that do have the scope, and all of them say nothing but good things. The non-RH version of it had nothing but good things to say about it, so that's why I purchased it. I'm a big fan of Cinta mounts. I've had a Cinta mount for, 15 years at least. And I'm used to EQ mod. I know EQ mod, so why change something if it ain't broke? And that's another reason why I bought it. And I went from the Atlas to the 6R, now the 8R, and who knows what's next. So I'm hoping that. Go ahead.
Well, Mark Ellis has the 8R, and that's been his primary mount now for almost a year. It's 8 months.
Okay.
Almost 12 months.
Yeah, he's one of the people that I spoke to. Yeah, he loves it.
And he hasn't had much issue with backlash, and if he has, most of it gets kind of sussed out with the guiding and whatnot. So it's not a huge issue if you are guiding, whether it's OAG or off-axis. So, it's not going to be a bad purchase if you have the money to put behind it.
And not for nothing, with my current seeing as it is right now, from Long Island, I know there's a lot of people out there that have just as bad skies as I do, but nobody on this channel. But places around the world, I know people are in Florida and stuff like that. Even Tarek's in the UAE, and he's got Bortle 8 skies, and I saw somebody from Florida, Miami, on the chat. They're Bortle 8, 9 skies. There's only so much great guiding can do. There's only so far you could go. It's if you're at 0.3 guiding in New York, who cares?
You're doing really good.
Yeah, you're doing really good.
But unless you're doing 30-minute exposures, you're never going to see it.
No, exactly. So my seeing in New York is 1.5 minutes as it is. So so as long as I'm guiding under 0.9, and I'm doing 15-minute exposures, yeah, who cares?
Now if you're like Scott over here with the 1400, and you're out at 3,400 focal length, then you're going to start seeing that
27,
guiding not
37
being accurate. Yeah.
Well, okay. So again, you got to remember also that my highest scope right now is under 1,000.
Yeah.
So don't give me. Maybe I should have made that kind of blanket statement. So thank you for correcting me, Jason. Because I don't want to. No, you're right. Because you're exactly
we don't want to confuse
you're
people.
Exactly right. Yeah. No, you're exactly right. But I just want to make people know I have a 127 refractor. That's my biggest scope, and it's at 952. Yeah. So with a non-reducing flanger, so I'm at 952 all the time. So at 0.9, I could guide all night.
Yeah.
All night. Now, Scott or Eric cannot. Jason definitely can because he hasn't seen a scope in 2 months. But the two guys on the but the two guys on the right who are shooting 2,000 millimeters plus,
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
those guys need to guide a little bit better just because of their native focal length.
Yes.
And I mean, it goes back to the rule. I mean, Scott can
we do
speak to
quite
it as
a bit.
well.
It's like over sampling. We do quite. We are over. You know, depending on your camera, we end up over sampling quite a bit on these Schmeds. You know, so we have to have really good guiding.
Yeah.
Well,
exactly.
Well, and you can adjust that with binning as well. You can bin 2x2. I've been 2x2, and it fixes that right away.
Okay.
So I mean, a lot like in photography, you've got your triangle of things that you need to look at: your focal length, your exposure, and your seeing.
Yep.
And those are all going to be, determined on what camera you're putting on there, what type of reducers, focal flatteners, things like that you're adjusting your focal length, and what you're seeing is. So I mean, there's so many caveats to these questions that we really need a bigger bucket
picture
of info to really give you a specific answer. But we've beat it ad nauseum over the last year and a half that I've been with you guys. Go on to the AstroBen, go on to spacing the name of it right now. The website where we can go in and mock up the target and
astronomy.tools.
Yeah, astronomy.tools.
Or that, Blackwater Skies as well.
Blackwater Skies, Telescopius.
Yep.
If you have all of the metrics of your scope that you want to use, the camera that you're going to use, what the pixel pitch is, what reducers you're going to have, the target you want to go after, you can put all of these variables in, and it'll give you a really darn good picture of whether or not you're barking up the right tree, or the stumbling blocks that you're going to have to overcome to get the result that you want, or the things that you're going to need to adjust in your imaging sequence to be able to get what you want. And that's really the most valuable tool that we have at our disposal, is those things given to us for free on the internet. Is being able to plug those things in.
Too.
Yeah, Stellarium does
also.
it. So it's utilizing the tools that you have at hand to really find that sweet spot. And we're more than happy to help you guys like we're doing here. But you can do it even if we're not on, and going in and plugging in and playing with those variables based on the targets that you have within your skies. And the nice thing is all these websites don't care north or south hemisphere, because you can plug it in, you can look at a target, you can see what it's going to be at that focal length with that camera, with these different functions put into this equation. You're going to be able to get a very solid result and tell you what you can or can't do with your setup.
Yeah, and Jay,
really
I think, absolutely, and I think you're right when we said we do talk about this probably. Literally at least two out of the 4 shows of the month it comes up that you're sitting there and say, everyone says, okay, well, I want to do astrophotography. What scope do I want to buy? And again, this is not a subject to open up in the last 18 minutes of the show again, but
did you freeze?
He froze.
His internet dropped out.
Yep, he froze.
I'm willing to bet where he was going was just talking about the value of these tools and how, somebody was saying on here, Sky Safari. And Sky Safari is really good at that type of stuff. But the biggest thing that you can do to help yourself the whole way through is being able to take and really figure out what it is you want to pursue. Plug in the variables, the different cameras, different scopes, different parts and pieces that you have either at your disposal or that you're looking to buy, so that you make sure you're buying the correct tool for the job. So
and the other thing that is really important is making sure that your foundation is solid. You want to if you're on a pier, that's half the battle right there. If you're like me and you don't have a pier, you want to make sure that your tripod and your mount is setting on a solid base, and so it mitigates any vibration that's there. You also want to make doubly sure that you are polar aligned as accurately and as close to it as you can possibly get. The other wild card is understanding that there are different levels of mounts that are out there. There are some mounts where you're just going to be fighting it. and you're gonna have to either get it hyper tuned, or you're gonna have to play around with it until you can find that sweet spot. And the better quality mount that you get, the more stable that base is going to be, the mount is, God, I can't say that enough. The mount is just about everything.
Well, it's the foundation. If you build a house crooked, everything's going to roll to the left or right. So if you don't have a good base, you're going to be fighting it from the word go. So spend your money on a good tracking mount. Whatever your flavor is, whether you're using...
making doubly sure that you're not going overweight. I made that mistake, big time. I had a CGXL, and that's a big mount. That's got a huge payload capacity at 75 pounds. That's a lot of scope. I went overweight.
Quick.
I went overweight. And I was wondering why my RA was suffering. Well, it's because I was like 5 or 6 pounds overweight.
Yeah, you're fighting a losing battle.
Exactly right. So you got to make sure that you're balanced correctly. Maybe you need to play around with the the balance, and maybe you do need to go right ascension heavy, and play around with if you have a backlash problem. That's one of the reasons that I went with the Rainbow, is because it has at any one time 30% of the gears engaged at one time. It has practically no backlash whatsoever.
Well, you're paying for something like that, man.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you pay a lot of money for that.
That's not a beginner. That's not basically a beginner or a somewhat, I would say, intermediate astronomer or astrophotographer.
Yeah.
Mount. I mean,
but you can also get even the cheapest Rainbow that is available. I think is like $3,500. And that's the 135. Yeah. I think it's like 3,000, 3,500, something like that.
Yeah, again, that's also light. That's also a light payload. Light payload.
Yeah, I think the payload on that is 25 pounds. I think something like that.
Yeah, something like that. It's like 25 or 30 pounds. There he is.
Yeah,
he's back.
So, if you have a nice refractor, something like something at under 1,000 millimeter, you can run the 135 and it's no problem, and you can do it weightless. You don't need weights with it, But you're right, Eric. It's not an entry level setup by any sense.
No.
So
But if you're
Dan
looking
was
for
starting to say
accuracy,
before he went.
Yeah, we lost you there, brother.
I don't know. My lovely brand new white Verizon router decided to turn off on its own while I was sitting here. I watched it and the light turned off.
Mm-hmm. Lovely.
Don't know why.
You got like this and then froze, and I look over, call disconnected.
Don't know, and I'm blaming you because the last thing I saw was you turned to the right and I heard a clicking noise.
I clicked to turn the clock on so that they could see how much time we had left, and then you went away, and I went, that doesn't affect Dan's input.
That's crazy. Where's my stuff now? What was I saying? I don't even know what I was saying.
You were talking about scopes, and then we segued into mounts and the importance of good solid base and good mounts.
Oh yeah, I heard you talking about the $8,000 mount you got going.
Well, it's not just that one. I mean, it's any there are a lot of good mounts out there that aren't harmonic drive.
No, absolutely. Yeah. And I'm hoping that the EQ8R is one of them. But
exactly.
I mean,
I'd say if you can find my mount, if you can find a CEM60, a used one,
pick it up. Yep.
Pick it.
Find it.
Up.
Yeah, pick it up.
Grab that sucker.
Well, like I've got the 70G, and I haven't had any issues with it. I know Simon had a lot of issues with his. Tyler picked up a 70G on my recommendation, and then he found a 60, so he's in the process of selling the 70. Not because there's anything wrong with it. Everybody says 60 is more stable. He found a deal on it. He grabbed it.
Yeah. The 60 is a solid workhorse, mid-range, good priced mount. I understand you have, innovations and changes and all of that.
Sure.
But
there's not a lot of innovation and change between the 60 and 70.
Yeah, they should.
Yeah, it's like in photography. The workhorse in photography is the 24-70. The f2.8 24-70. That thing, that lens has been proven over and over and over again to just be an absolute workhorse.
Yep.
And it doesn't matter which one you get, the Canon, the Nikon, any of the
even the aftermarket glasses.
24-70 is a beast.
Yeah, aftermarkets. Yeah.
Yep.
I mean, I can't wait to see what the EQ8 is going to give me. I actually saw somebody in the chat was saying, I forget who it was because my chat crapped out too, but somebody said that the 127 is going to look like a toothpick on the 8R. So I mean,
that thing is huge.
Yeah. But you know
easily
what? I mean,
2.5 times as big as your 6.
But you know what though, the whole thing is that's going to allow me to go past the 30-pound mark. You know what I mean? Because that's where I'm kind of stuck right now. The 33, 34-pound payload. I wouldn't go any further than that because even though that the mount is rated for 44, I think even 30 is pushing it for imaging, and I've been getting very, very lucky with mine, and it's been guiding consistently 0.4, 0.5, consistently. And that has something to do with I'm really anal with my balancing. I check my polar alignment every night, no matter what. I tweak it every night just because, I don't have it locked down.
He's on a pier.
And I'm on a pier.
He's on a pier.
But you know what? Though? Checking it every night, it takes literally like 3 seconds. I'm not like some other joker who decides in the middle of Buffalo to buy a manual filter wheel. So I'm not, I'm not that guy. I'm only out there for a couple of minutes in the beginning to kind of check things and make sure everything runs right. Then I run inside with my hot chocolate, but yeah. So I mean. Go ahead.
George Lutz said, when it's cloudy, you can sell rides on the mount.
That's fine. I'm okay with that. I'm all right with that.
It's good. Dan and I are going to be polar opposites on this. His mount is he's going to have the huge mount with the small scope. I'm going to have the little tiny mount with the huge scope.
I'm telling you. It's we should definitely put a photo next to each other and do that because that'd be funny
hysterical.
You know what I'll do? Go.
You get to laugh all the way to the bank because he's moving to Florida. He's only going to get 30 days of imaging a year because between the clouds, the tropical storms, and all of the other atmospheric trouble of humidity and whatnot in the Great Strait of Florida, he'll have 30 to maybe 50 days a year he'll get to image. So you'll get to out-image him at least 2 to 1.
I don't know about that. Maybe at least like 0.6 to 1.
See.
But I mean, it's like I probably get I probably if I don't know. I'm gonna add it up this year coming up to see how many actual clear nights we got just because of what you said because now I'm curious. But I can see getting more than 125 imaging days a year from Long Island. I can't. Like a third of the year, I can't see getting. We had that 1 week this year that it was all week was beautiful, but that was the only week it was like that.
Yeah.
So,
well, if you want those things, you can move out here to the desert. And other than this year with our monsoon season, we normally are pulling about 250 to 300 days of clear skies. So.
Yeah.
And this is why we hate Jason and why he hasn't been on the show for the past 4 weeks. He wasn't working. He got kicked off.
and the best part is I'm probably not going to be on for about another month because I'm headed to another show and then I'm taking a couple weeks with my family to get caught up with them.
Speaking of your family, do we have our normal closer tonight?
We do. She should be in here.
We do. Now. I'm so excited.
She was downstairs practicing. She's like, Daddy, am I on the show tonight? You got it, baby. So
Yeah.
she's been practicing her line.
Awesome.
She's got it down. She's looking forward to it.
When is she? Is she 6?
She'll
Almost?
be 6 next April. So
Next April.
Oh, okay. So
Yeah.
she's
Okay,
5 and a
so
half.
she got a year.
Yep.
Okay.
5 and a half. All right.
And
Yeah.
Of course,
So
since the last time you guys saw Jack, he's cut a tooth. He's crawling about 100 miles an hour. So
Wow.
we've realized that
So
thank God we
is-
don't have drapes because he's a climber. So he's
Oh boy.
electrical cords be damned.
So have you picked out her first scope yet?
No, because I got to get back to stable income first.
Oh, yeah.
Everything that I've done this last month and a half has been just trying to get me through, hopefully, the end of the year. And my next 2 weeks of work is to hopefully get me into January financially. So anything else that comes will be cushion. But we've been kind of kicking around. The nice thing is I do have 2 scopes. I have multiple iPads here, and I currently have 3 ASIR Pros, so it's really easy for me to just set her up, and if she wants to image, set it up there. I teach her how to do it and let her go. She can technically do EAA right on the iPads.
Yeah.
Right on cue. Here she is.
There you go.
Here, we're
where is
talking about
she?
you, baby girl.
There
she had to
she
go get
is. Hey, smile.
There she is.
Can you
Smiley?
hear us?
They're saying hi.
I
Hey.
missed you.
They say they miss you. You remember Mr. Dan and Mr. Eric and Mr. Scott? And you know the goofy
Hi,
guy that they're
sweetheart.
sitting on. They say hi. Say hi, guys.
Hi.
Hi, viewers.
Hey. Hey, next week we should talk a little bit about collimation.
Screw that,
Next
man.
week
Yeah.
we should talk a little bit. Oh, shut up, you refractor!
Hold on,
Yeah,
let me give you a preview of what next week's version of collimation is going to look like.
Exactly.
I'm going to bed. I get to go to
Put
bed
them up on
early.
Restreamio. They can do it on their own.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, because actually I started tinkering around. I found a couple new tools, because I've got that Tribatanoff, and the Tribatanoff actually does help quite a bit with collimation. I was pleasantly
that's what it's
surprised.
made for, isn't it?
It's
yeah,
specifically for the SCTs.
It's for the SCTs, and I was kind of leery, and on the fence. I do have it, but it does actually do a very good job in collimating your Schmidt. So that's
and if you're nice,
That's
I'll
one
bring
tool.
home the what is it? The
Hotec?
Hotec. I'll bring home the
Oh,
Hotec
yeah.
to show. This is
That's-
what I don't use.
That's the Cadillac.
Yeah, it's kind
That's the Cadillac. I mean, that's like a $40 piece of.
Yeah,
piece
but
of
it's
kit there.
it's awesome for anything from 8 inches to about 11. Anything over like 11, you're starting to get issues with the reflections coming back. And anything shorter than 7 1/4, you're not going to have enough room to return the lasers. So they do make other models, special orders for larger telescopes, for stuff like Ritchie Crichtons and all that. There are other, but the special order. It's like one of those things that you order it, it's yours, whether you want it or not.
It's yours.
It's like the 6-inch Hyperstar. It's like a special order that if you buy it, there's no returning. There's
no return.
yours. So
No, but I have discovered there's two others. MetaGuide is supposed to have a really good collimation aid. It's a video collimation aid. So it's basically live and using
That's cool.
video to collimate. And then there's this one it's a free download. Owl's collimation tool or Owl's collimation aid. That was an interesting one, and that one actually helped out quite a bit as well. So there's a few of them out there.
And if I
Yeah, and don't forget
correctly-
Dylan O'Donnell's video on it. He's got a great video on collimating SCTs.
Yeah.
He does.
And if I recall correctly, Nina,
I do that. I refer to that a lot.
Nina had a really good
Nina has
collimation
one.
and focusing tool that works
Yeah,
really
they
well
do.
with
They
both
do.
Yeah, and
refractor
I believe
and SCT.
APT does. I believe APT has one.
I
as
saw
well.
it on Nina, but of course I've never used it. So
You'll get there.
yeah, eventually I'll get there. I'll get there again. I mean, listen. I mean, that's the way I started. I did the Schmidt Cassegrain with the Allen keys. There was no such thing as Bob's knobs. There is no such thing like that. So I was a guy at 10 o'clock at night. Then all of a sudden you hear ding 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 ding, and you say, shit. You know, and then you drop the Allen key at 8 o'clock at night when you can't see anything.
And of course it's black, so it blends in. And
you're just saying, thank God I didn't hit my correcting lens. You know,
yeah.
So you know, it's kind of like, you know, listen, collimation, and just I'm gonna demystify collimation for in 2 seconds. It's not as hard as you think. It's easy. It's easy, but you could get crazy anal with it. So you gotta be, you know. So it's a lot. If people start talking about lenses and mirrors and glass and and turning screws, and people get scared. You do it 3 or 4 times, it's not a problem.
Yep.
No.
It's not a problem.
No.
It's really not that bad.
One of the things that, you know, I was, even when I was using Dylan's, you know, tool when I first got started with collimating the SCT, he says, you know, he was like, you find, you know, the one screw, and you just do a slight turn, you know, and stuff like that. But what he didn't mention is that when you turn one, many times there's another one. If you turn one, you know, if you tighten one, you have to slightly loosen another.
Yep.
Depending on
That's
where,
right. It's a push-pull.
Where that push-pull is. He didn't mention that.
No, although he did mention, he did mention that you do have to make sure that you gotta, because when you start messing with the screws, it's going to shift your image. And he did mention that you have to bring that image back to center before you make your next adjustment. Yeah. But you're right. Yeah. I don't think you mentioned that. So that's a really, if you start unloosening one and don't tighten the other one, next thing you know, your secondary smashing into your primary. So just be careful with that. And then you'll be calling me crying, saying you need a new telescope.
As with everything in physics, with every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So
exactly.
You know, and not for nothing, but it is an easy fix to, if you're not using something like Bob's knobs, and we won't go into that right now. Look it up online; you'll see what they are. But if you're not using something like that, and you are using either an Allen wrench or a screwdriver, it's easy enough to just take a couple of rubber bands and leash that tool right to your hand.
So you don't
rubber band
it.
that tool. And run those rubber bands around and leash it to your hand, because the last thing you want to do is drop a screwdriver on your corrector plate.
Yep.
You don't want to do that.
Or
that
the
sucks.
last thing that you do.
Exactly.
Depending on the corrector plate.
Right.
Before you start, good luck finding one that matches your mirror. But anyway, that's another story altogether. The last
we'll talk more about collimation. We'll talk more about collimation and stuff like that next week.
That's fine.
I'm sure Abby was like to say something. She's dying to say something.
Chris T actually last comment was I don't know if you guys remember, Chris T was looking for an adapter. He had a couple of lenses that he needed. He had some Leica lenses that he was trying to adapt for astrophotography. And I pointed him in the right direction on which adapters to get on the fly. I kind of helped him out. And it looks like what we said worked. He actually had to go Zeiss to Nikon and out because nobody from, ZWO is not going to make a Leica adapter.
A Leica mount,
No, it's not going to happen. So it seemed to work. So you're welcome, Chris. I'm glad it worked out. I can't wait to see some pics. But
awesome.
That being said, I think it's 10:40, and it's time for our favorite blonde-haired person, considering it's the only blonde-haired person.
Our female host.
Our female host.
I used to have blonde hair. Not anymore.
Now it's really bleached.
Yeah, and I don't know where it's bleached from because there's no sun in Buffalo. So I mean,
I ain't bleached, baby. That's all gray. Okay.
All right, you ready to say it?
Jeez.
Give us the line.
You're on.
Keep imaging, keep educating and clear skies. And see you next time on Astroworld TV.
Good guys,
night.
everybody.
Good night, guys.
Take it easy. Good night, guys.